there, friends, and welcome to With a Witch, where we do some fun stuff with me, a witch. Today, I'm going over the pages I created for Beltane. Yes, I do realize that I'm putting this up just a little bit, just a tad bit late. Even for me, I tend to celebrate the astrological dates of the SABBAT, so I celebrated on the 3rd and 4th of May instead of the 1st. Regardless, this is coming late, but first of all, I feel like Beltane can be celebrated anytime in the mid-spring season. You don't have to match a particular day, so this might still be useful to some of you, maybe. And second of all, I just liked a lot of these pages, so regardless of the timing, I wanted to share them. So I'm going to. You may notice that I'm in a fresh journal for these pages. I did indeed finish up my previous book of shadows and started on a new one, so setup pages and a flip through of my previous book are coming. This first spread I'm working on here is just a blanding page. I go through several iterations of this actually, but the main goal was to create a set of pages that embody the general moods and themes of Beltane Eve, and then the day of Beltane. My original idea for the page on the left, the Beltane Eve page, was to create some sort of dark, starry night type background and cut some moody images into the shapes of flames to create a bit of a fire motif. I pretty quickly decided that that looked horrible, partially because of the size of the images I printed, and partially because I was not prepared for how difficult it would be to cut pictures into a shape that looks enough like flames to pass. So instead, I added an extra piece of origami paper to the background and traced a 3 over the top of it in gold Sharpie. I then tried first cutting the images to fit nicely within the 3 shape, but that was way too hard to make happen neatly, so then I just cut a bunch of small triangles and started layering them. In case it wasn't obvious, I did a 3 because I was celebrating Beltane Eve on the 3rd. I finished this up and moved on to the other side of the spread, which I intended to fill with flowers made of petals cut from pretty green and flowery and blooming images. After I got a little way into cutting the petals, however, 2 things happened. One, I decided that I really wanted to position the petals not as a few separate flowers around the page, but rather as one giant flower radiating from the center of the page. And 2, I finally succumbed to the fact that I hated the left side of the page. Just hated it. Hated it so much. It doesn't look too bad on camera, but the colors were really just awful, and it wasn't giving me the feeling that I wanted. So I ripped all the paper up, I'm really glad I decided to layer everything over the top of some base sheets so it was easy to rip, and decided to mirror the planned flower motif on the left half of the page, just with the darker and more fiery images. I did have to print out more images, which was a little sad because, the paper waste. It was a lot of paper waste. It was a little unfortunate. I'm not going to say that it was worth it necessarily, but I am a lot happier with how the new spread turned out. I particularly like the 3D part of it, how only the centers of the petals are glued down, so the edges stick out and layer. They were a bit of a pain to work around, but I am a fan regardless. With my flower finished, I went over my numbers in a black marker. Honestly, I don't know the brand. They're not labeled, and I got them for like $12 off of Amazon 2 years ago, probably, so let's just say they're not branded. Then, with the same not brand of marker, I added a couple of decorative motifs, green on the Beltane side and red for Beltane Eve. I thought about adding some headings or decorative lettering to these pages, but my hand kept catching on the edges of the petals as I was sketching things out, so I decided to give the petals a bit more time to dry and for me to think of something to put on these pages, and just moved on. For the next spread, I decided to do a playlist spread, again split up with Beltane Eve on the left and Beltane itself on the right. I have a larger Beltane playlist than just these songs, so I just went through that playlist on shuffle and chose the first 6 songs that turned up for each of these categories. It actually turned out to be pretty representative of the playlist, which was nice, though the shuffle really liked Florence and the Machine this time around. I added some boxes around the album covers, then some red accents in a similar style to those from the previous page, just to try to tie the spreads together a bit. Looking back on it, I feel like this page ended up a little plain, I guess, for my taste. I tend to prefer either a very minimalist, very functional sort of look, or something more like the previous spread, artsy and a little unnecessary. But this spread had too much going on to be minimalist, but not enough content to really look complete. I'll have to consider what to do with spreads like this going forward, if they're even worth making. I do like the idea, but I just haven't figured out the design of them yet. Some green motifs to the right side of the spread, and the playlist spread is done. Like I said, it's not my favorite, but the process was much less painful than the landing page spread, so I will absolutely take it. The next spread was pretty simple, just a page to describe the ritual I intended to perform on Beltane Eve. This particular ritual utilized some pleasurable things to light my fire, so to speak, in order to keep that fire burning and fueling my creative fertility in a couple of specific endeavors for the coming season. This layout is mostly focused on the functional. The ritual written into the center of the spread with space left on the outer edges for notes, comments, changes after the ritual, that sort of thing. These headings that I'm writing down describe the formatting for the majority of the rituals that I do. I actually learned them from Reverend Rowan Bombadil's book, Igniting Intimacy, which just happens to be very appropriate for this spread, but I do use it for all of my rituals. It's just a basic layout, and the headings go as follows. So creating space, setting intention, raising energy, release, surrender, and giving thanks. I don't usually stick to these in any sort of hard and fast way, but they are a very good guideline when I'm coming up with rituals from scratch. On to the next page. I didn't have a particular ritual in mind for Beltane itself, but I always celebrate Sabbats with a feast, so I designated one page for Beltane-type activities, and the other page to document the fantastic food I was planning. I again split the activity page into parts, with the larger portion used to describe the planned activities, performing a garden dedication, doing an energy capturing knot spell with a modified maypole, and we'll get to more on that in a moment actually, and just going on a walk around the neighborhood, trying to pay attention to what things have changed and are continuing to change as the seasons develop. The smaller part of the page, again, was set aside for notes, comments, memories of the day, and the like. For the feast page, I just set aside some boxes where I can paste pictures of what I make. To the sides of the boxes, I left space for either notes or for the recipes. I'm not sure which will go there yet. It will probably depend on how much space I have and how long the recipes end up being. Please excuse the lighting change with this next clip. I have no idea what caused it. It drives me crazy. The last thing I did on this spread was set up my modified maypole. So I'm a big thread crafter, so I have a lot of embroidery thread hanging around. I took some of that thread in colors that I like, cut lengths of it that roughly matched the length of the page, and started pasting them onto a strip of paper that I measured to match the gap beneath the heading. I'm not going to lie, it was a bit of a pain. In other words, a major pain, to keep the thread straight and sticking to the paper more than they stuck to my fingers. But I made it work, and the outcome was very worth it. threads dried on the paper, I turned to my last spread, which was a very simple page I planned to use for my dedications, words of thanksgiving, all that sort of stuff at the end of the day on Beltane. Because I intended to write out all of the planned words, I gave myself 2 pages to work with, again with some space set aside for comments and notes. If I were to do this page again, I would only add a note space to 1 page, I think. I ended up needing more space for the dedications, but I had more than enough for my notes after the fact, so just some slight switching around would really help with that. With that done, I trimmed the protruding thread from the top of the paper strip, then glued it down right below the heading. I plan to use this colorful array of threads on Beltane to knot in the feelings and energies of the season and the celebratory day so that I can retrieve those energies and utilize them as needed throughout the rest of the season. Although having the threads on this page made the surrounding pages a bit of a challenge to write on, I actually really love this and would definitely do it again. And here are my final pages after being filled in. I decided to go into the landing pages and add in some notes and feelings and associations for each of the days. I really love how this page turned out with the addition of text. I think it just makes it a little bit more complete feeling. I didn't finish filling in the dedication page. I actually prefer to write those on the day of so that I can let my genuine feelings and emotions on the day come forward. So I don't plan much of those in advance, but I'm sure by the time that this is actually getting posted, they have been thoroughly filled out. And those are the pages. Thanks for hanging out with me while I created these pages. If you made it this far, drop a flower emoji of your choice down in the comments to say hi. Give this video a like, and if you want to explore more things with a witch, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, I hope you are fueled by the season's strong fire, and that your efforts yield wondrous rewards. Bye.